Hi, my name is Jamie Vonk, and today I'm just going to be giving a little information on some methods for post-disaster trauma and disaster intervention that we as mental health providers can provide, as well as some things that we are able to offer to the community to help in these points of crisis. So in today's agenda, I'm just going to introduce a little bit of what these processes look like. There is the aspect of psychological first aid, post-disaster strategies and intervention methods, as well as the counterproductive strategies and interventions, and then the essential characteristics that we should portray as mental health providers. So disasters are inevitable, as we know. However, how we deal with them and how we can help in the constructs of helping the community thrive throughout them and in the recovery process is integral to our role that we play when we're trying to address survivor's guilt, their fear of losing control and facing overwhelming emotions, and even potentially becoming mentally ill. All of these things require special care. When we think of what special care is, we're thinking of psychological first aid. There are 5 main elements in psychological first aid, which are safety, calm, connectedness, self-efficacy, and group efficacy, and then hope. We are able to provide a supportive, compassionate response to others who are suffering and need support when we provide psychological first aid and bring them back to a centered place in that recovery process. When we think of strategies and interventions, there are 3 things we really want to consider with both ourselves and those that we're helping treat. We don't want to go too fast, and we would like to focus on the small, more solvable problems than the bigger ones that kind of become overwhelming in the mind. So often mentally, the stress response causes our minds to go hog wild with trying to process through all of the intense things that we're going through. And what we really need to do is learn how to hone in and teach others how to hone in on assessing and accessing coping mechanisms to assess the energy levels and how to bring them back up when we're starting to feel drained. Stress usually distracts us from what we actually need and drains us of our energy, which can be very overwhelming and potentially even lead to exhaustion and burnout. And if we're able to identify and focus on the things we can control instead of the things we're not able to control, we're able to actually recognize and accept those things and then identify what is in our control and how to actually move forward with those. In doing so, we're able to gain control over our own attitudes and the way we're perceiving the situations that we are in. When we're thinking of individual intervention methods, there is one great method called cognitive behavioral therapy. The CBT methods are effective in reducing any psychopathology that may occur after exposure to disaster, as well as maintaining a trauma-focused CBT approach. It's going to actually help mitigate the suffering for those who have been through the disasters. When we use CBT, it's going to require a lot of self-analyzation and self-regulation, and that's integral for us to learn how to do ourselves before we teach others. And it's really nice because once we learn how to do it, we can teach others in the community how to do it, and then they can continue to teach others. And so when we have these big mass events, they're able to come together and help in that process and not just have to lean on us as mental health providers, because it is something that they're able to work together to help break out of that stress mode. And then when they do go into more group intervention methods, there's a lot of non-specific community-based interventions that help foster that healing process. A lot of these activities are going to be emotional and mental regulation activities. Stuff like group discussions are going to help process through the emotions they're feeling. It's going to help them not feel quite so alone. There's also going to be basic life skills, camp activities that the adults can progressively get involved in. And then starting schools in the disaster affected areas to host community-based group interventions. When we have these interventions, it brings back that camaraderie. It really unifies the community on one accord, kind of working together to use these activities to help both the high risk population and the general affected disaster population, because we don't really want to highlight one more than the other. Even though some might need a little bit more care, we want them to feel unified. When we think of counterproductive strategies and interventions, there are some things that may occur where we use them and we think that they're positive, but really we have to provide a training to recognize and figure out which strategies are not the most productive in helping those that are being affected by these disasters. First of all, there is going to be a lot of trauma that we're working with. And when we're looking at the brunt force that the disaster brings, it's important to encourage participation and avoid stigmatization, as I said before. So we don't want to use terms that really bring up that stigmatic feeling. There is a lot of stigma, unfortunately, still around these days about mental health, about the psychotherapy, all of that stuff. So we want to avoid those terms and make more of a generalized consensus on how to approach this in community-friendly wording. And then realize that specialized care is only needed in a small group of the population. So not every single person that's went through this is going to need specialized care. So a lot of the care that's going to be provided is actually going to be by other community group members that have been trained in just disaster prevention care. There's also going to be a strong need for demedicalization of survivors' responses and deprofessionalization of the services being delivered. What does that mean? So demedicalization just means not using such intense sounding medical terms, as I said previously. And the deprofessionalization is bringing in those community members, bringing in the training for those that are of influence in the community, that are coming in medical care teams on something besides just the mental health realm. There's going to be community leaders, there's going to be spiritual leaders, religious organizations, nonprofits. All of these are going to learn these methods. And because it's more natural and because it's not like just medical terms and medical people coming in, they're going to feel a lot more at ease when working with these individuals. What psychological first aid is not. So as I said, psychological first aid is our response to helping those that are in need when going through this disaster and crisis. So it is not debriefing, obtaining details, or treating the individuals. When we debrief or obtain too many details, if we ask too many questions, if we try to just attain more information than they're willing to give, it's actually not useful and it might actually be harmful. We don't want to press into that. We want them to deliver it at the speed and the amount that they want to bring it. And then with the treating, unless it is a medical certified person that is bringing in that treatment, we're not going to apply labels, diagnoses, or counseling to these individuals. They should, one, be seeking it, and two, in that beginning stage, right after the disaster happens, it might be too overwhelming to even be putting those labels or diagnoses, any of that on there. You have to move at the pace that the process is going through. So if there is too overwhelming amount of information being put there after such a severe event has just happened, it's actually going to be detrimental to one's mental health. When we're looking at the characteristics and professional skills that are needed by mental health providers, we want to see how they're going to be educating, training, negotiating, treating, and advocating for those that are being afflicted. When we look at education, the education really involves us training and teaching others how to address and how to go about helping those that are going through disaster, providing training seminars and teachings on how to approach it, the wording to use, the communication styles, how to bring others together, using all different forms of that. And then also learning how to negotiate. A lot of the time there are providers and the care for coverage isn't always covered perfectly. So there's going to be a negotiation aspect of that as well. As we're going into treating, it's going to involve treatment of pre-existing and even new mental health conditions that may arise from this trauma. If they didn't previously have mental health conditions because of the trauma, there may be PTSD that arises, anything like that. And if there are pre-existing ones, it is important that they are referred to a mental health professional. As said previously, the do's and the don'ts, you don't want to put a label, you don't want to treat if you are not a mental health professional that is specialized in that. And then also advocating. Mental health professionals are called to advocate for both the community and the health workers and create a safe space for both of them in the midst of this. When we're looking at the responses, there are 3 actual responses that we're going to be looking at. So there's the pre-disaster period, which is the preparedness. We want to make sure that there is a bunch of public education activities available that are going to actually teach people what to do if disaster strikes. It's going to have stuff like life skills, educating about disaster and mental health, and then also building a disaster response network. That's going to involve collaboration with existing agencies. So it can be anywhere from just local nonprofits, government agencies, community agencies, anything that's going to be helpful when something like that happens. And then there's also going to be disaster response training. So it's going to be various areas of skills and management that are going to help the process run more cohesively and just more streamlined, as well as leading into community involvement, which is going to bring about support and resilience training for those that are going through such a process, and for helping those impacted so that they can find that balance again, both mentally and emotionally, as well as providing education and communication. It's going to be information and activities around mental health, around recovery, around how to build out education systems and rebuild the community, all of those things that may be lacking because it's getting destroyed in the disaster. You'll want to see a rebuilding of that in the community, even if it's in small incremental ways. The next one is going to be immediately after the disaster. This is also referred to as the heroic and honeymoon phases. There are multidisciplinary roles of professionals within this phase. There's going to be a multidisciplinary relief team, mental health surveillance, healthcare and targeted disaster interventions, collaboration with agencies and referrals, as well as promotion of resilience and coping. When we look at multidisciplinary relief teams, it's going to involve multiple different people with different roles that are working together to bring back this sense of unification, one, in the community, but also the sense that they have a support network that they can rely on if they are facing troubles and struggles within their mental health, their emotional health, their physical health, all of those things, and creating a network where they can be referred to in that relief team. And then the mental health surveillance is just really keeping an eye out for those that might need that more specialized care and being able to have the referral network to send them where they need to go. There's a healthcare and targeted disaster interventions. With that, again, we're going to want to make sure that there are interventions that are known and are implemented that can help with kind of coming alongside with those that are being afflicted and providing interventions that are going to help them emotionally re-regulate and find that peace again, start implementing new or already previously established patterns in life, such as just like creating kind of a jive of going on walks and creating a safe space both internally and externally, and finding a sense of fun again so that they can slowly come out of that mourning process and come out of that traumatized feeling and back in normality. There's also going to be collaboration with agencies. As I said, a referral network is very important, and that collaboration with those agencies is integral for the operation of future events that may happen, as well as the ones that currently are going on with that disaster. And then at the end of that, obviously, promotion of resilience and coping. There's a lot of coping methods that can be used and implemented into this, and creating a resilience to future things that may occur or future feelings that may come up is very important in this process. When we get to the end of that, there is something called the disillusionment phase. There is a level that people kind of get to when they can't get the care that they're expecting or that they desire, and this creates disillusionment. When we are in that phase, it's very important to provide care for the mentally ill because they're a little bit more unstable in that. So we'll want to attend to those referrals and make sure that everybody's getting the care that they need to the capacity we can provide. It's not going to be perfect, but the best that we can do. And then a continued expansion of capacity building activities. So there's going to be a lot of community outreach programs that are going to be involved to create that space. for helping just build activities around rebuilding the community, literally, both socially and physically, to bring back that sense that they're together. It's that connectedness again. And then supporting community health workers. Usually when disaster strikes, community health workers are put through a lot of stress, and they too have to make sure that they're attending to their needs. And when they're doing that, they can easily face burnout. So we want to make sure that we're assessing interventions and feedback mechanisms, and just making sure that the mental health providers that are helping are able to still be taking care of themselves while taking care of others as well. In summary, the main takeaways for disaster intervention that we really want to look at: we want to make sure that all of the planning and preparedness are essential in communities. When we are not prepared and we don't plan for the worst, we're not going to be ready when it strikes our community. So we want to have those things in play so that it's prepared for the worst case scenario. Hopefully it doesn't get to that, but if it does, we know what to do. Additionally, disaster relief should be holistic, integrative, and preventative. We should be looking at all parts of the person, what they may need. We should be integrating as many people into the care team as possible. We should be okay with not having to just rely on our own expertise and call in and refer those that might have better expertise. And again, just making sure it's a safe space for those to prevent future issues coming up from the effects of it. Community-based group intervention should begin as early as possible. The sooner they begin, the less likely it is for PTSD to occur, and the easier it's going to become for people to work through their emotional aspects of what they just went through. It's also important to, as I said before, demedicalize the survivor's disaster response and deprofessionalize the service while encouraging participation and helping prevent that stigma around the care they need. Rehabilitation efforts should be culturally appropriate and empowering. We should not be pushing our own views, our own ideologies. We should be looking at what is needed in that community and really applying that instead of pushing our own ideals. And then community participation is key. When you have an entire community affected by something, it is so important that they come together, they unify, and they learn that they're not in this alone, that they have a support, not just in the medical realm, but with each other. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much. I hope it was informative.